buy a sailboat and go off to Tahiti and live on coconuts and mangoes for the rest of your life.
Well, there's a lot of science that backs up what you're talking about. I mean, far too often when we reach these upper limit problems, we will cause a problem. We will cause an issue, whether it's those fearful thoughts or the injury or the illness. And I think it's a radical thought for some people to say, well, wait a minute, but I really did get sick. Well, I really did get injured. But as soon as I, in my life, came to that awareness that most of what was happening to me, I was causing. I mean, there are scientific studies out there that show that people have the ability within the mind to even change the color of their eyes. I mean, this is how powerful, as you reference, the subconscious, the deep work that needs to be done, it can be, because it can totally change who we are. So, Gay, when people become aware, the onion layers are being pulled back and they become aware of an upper limit problem, what is the first step that you recommend that they do?
Well, Steve, the first step of any serious program of self-change begins with commitment. So
Okay.
let's say if you want to expand your genius, that's the second thing that's in the big leap, is the zone of genius and how to get yourself
Right.
operating in the zone of genius. Well, start with a commitment that sounds like this. I commit to increasing the amount of time every day that I spend in my genius zone. Make a simple commitment like that. But it's something you can actually track. You can actually track the amount of time every day that you spent doing things that you love to do and doing things that make your biggest contribution to other people. That is the genius zone. When I first started thinking about this way back in the 80s, I realized that I was only spending about 1 hour out of my 8 or 9 hour workday doing what I most loved to do, what was in my genius zone. That was surprising to me because I had started thinking about this, but then when I actually documented it, I realized I was only spending 10% of my time there. So I set the intention, I made a commitment to increasing from 10% up to 30%, so that 3 hours out of my 9 hour day would be spent in my genius zone. And again, what's the genius zone? It's when you are doing what you love to do and you're doing something that makes a contribution to yourself and others at the same time. So I began to focus on increasing that amount of time. I got to that 30% pretty quickly. It took me a couple of years, but I got to that 30%. Then I bumped up to 50%. I said, okay, I want to, at the end of the week, when I count up my hours, I want to see that I spent at least 50% of my time in my genius zone. Probably getting there took another year or two. Ultimately, I set the intention by 1999, the end of the century, I wanted to be operating at 100%, where I was only doing things that I love to do and things that make a contribution to other people. And it worked. So for the last 20 some years, I've only been doing things that I love to do and only been doing things that make a contribution by my own standards to other people. And so that's writing books. That's you and I talking right now with you guys. That's me going out on a freezing day to Chicago and being on Oprah or whatever the thing is. But whatever I'm doing, because it fulfills my life purpose, I wanted to create a job I would never want to retire from. I haven't had to work for money for the last, 30 some years probably. But what turns me on when I get out of bed in the morning, I always sleep from 10 at night to 4:30 in the morning. So 4:30 in the morning finds me doing what I'm doing now, in some form or the other, either writing a book about it or talking to you guys or doing something that has to do. I do a lot of consultations with executives and things where I, will work with a company for an hour or two and kind of get them unstuck and then send in some of my proteges and students to work with them afterwards. So, but what I'm getting at is creating a life where you're focusing on doing the things that you are uniquely suited to do, that you love to do, that you do even if you weren't getting paid for it, if you had some other way to fund your life. Well, that's how we ought to be operating. Like you guys are in your genius zone here compared to what maybe you were doing 5 or 10 years ago.
Right.
And almost everybody probably that's listening or watching will have had that experience too. But it begins with commitment. You have to make a sincere body-mind commitment to increasing your genius every day, and then just start keeping track of it. And we start here with people 10 minutes a day. We ask them to start, pencil it into your calendar today, 10 minutes tomorrow. When you're ready to do 20 minutes, let us know. And so start wherever you need to start. You don't have to buy a sailboat and go off to Tahiti and live on coconuts and mangoes for the rest of your life.